Back to my mental health and crime channel. My name is Huda London. This is the part 2 of the interview I showed yesterday of somebody who suffers of antisocial personality disorder, which is the right term. The wrong term that has always been used is a psychopath. I really like this interview because you get an insight of somebody who suffers of the personality disorder and other things that include anxiety and depression. It is very interesting, and some of my viewers, subscribers have asked me for the part 2. Somebody in the comment channel was quite rude and said that I need to learn my mental health more, that's not the right term, and she said you can get sued for that. I replied to her in my comments that I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a cognitive behavior therapist. I know the right terms of mental health disorders, and you should learn it too. There's nothing wrong in writing a comment, but when it sounds threatening and it sounds rude, that is against YouTube's rights, and that is just being a play hater. I spent 4 years studying mental health. I don't need somebody who just has issues in their life to be a troll on my channel. Coming to someone's channel is like coming to someone's home. I invited you in, and I'm here for justice for the Idol Moscow victims, and to get the correct justice and find out if Brian Christopher Koberger is innocent or not. At the same time, since I'm a licensed mental health counselor, I opened this channel, you can see the channel's name, to spread mental health awareness for people who really need it. I've always told my subscribers, viewers, if anyone needs advice or guidance, I'm here free of charge. So for you to come and write such rude comments in my channel just shows that you have issues, not me. I have a very friendly community here, a small community. We love and care for each other. We discuss the case, and we try to stay on the facts, and we come with theories. My subscribers are the most decent, mindful, respectful subscribers. It just shows how they are in real life. You never see them being rude. If they have misunderstandings, they clear it up quickly. That's what I love about my subscribers. I really mean it. They're the most kind, respectful, mindful people who are here to get justice for the 4 victims. And I'm sure they don't mind hearing mental health awareness too.
There's a lot to it, obviously, but I think that gets the point across pretty well. And there's a lot to it, obviously, but I think that gets the point across pretty well. And the funny thing with nihilism is some people get meaning in their life by believing in something. Nihilists, the thing that they believe in is that they don't believe in things. Confusing, isn't it?
I can see that going one of 2 ways, liberating or depressing.
It's both. It really is.
How does one get diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder?
You know, I have a joke answer. I'm not going to give it, but
I wouldn't mind if you gave the joke before the real answer.
Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, well, the way that you get diagnosed, sorry, I find this more funny than you would probably. I would say like the main way people would get diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder would be if they wanted to get diagnosed with it, because I'm gonna be completely honest with you, right? It's not hard to avoid a diagnosis, assuming you're not at like a really rough stage in your life where you can't really hide your aggravation. It's like when someone's in a really bad mood, right? If you're in a somewhat bad mood, you can do a reasonably good job at not showing it off. But if you're in a really bad mood, people are going to notice. They're told correct information, but they're not told the whole truth. And if you do that in the right way, you can actually completely skirt around anything like a diagnosis. I'm sure you probably know just by talking to me, I'm pretty decent at talking. I'm not the type to overhype myself. I'm very against that kind of thing if I'm being honest, but honestly speaking, like, it's just one of those matters where it's really not hard to hide.
I'm surprised you said that you have low self-esteem, because many of the symptoms listed on all of the websites about antisocial personality disorder, they communicate an inflated sense of self.
So, there's a couple reasons for that actually. Generally people with like lower empathy, they do have more pride in themselves, right? Honestly speaking, like, it's just one of those matters where it's really not hard to hide.
I'm surprised you said that you have low self-esteem, because many of the symptoms listed on all of the websites about antisocial personality disorder, they communicate an inflated sense of self.
So, there's a couple reasons for that actually. Generally people with like lower empathy, they do have more pride in themselves, right? Because if you can do something but someone else can't and you don't have empathy, then the person just seems like lower than you. I'm not like that, but I'm saying like with people with like really low empathy, it's very easy to fall into that line of thinking. But oddly enough, the reason why I say I have low self-esteem, truthfully, my flaws are very noticeable to me, right? To the point where they're always in the back of my mind, at least to some extent. I can go down a list right now of every single thing about me that I consider a flaw, right? Every single one. I'm not going to, but it's for that reason actually that I'm so meticulous with how I present myself and why I study so much. If I don't understand material, I think to myself, well, why can I not understand this, right? And I will spend hours figuring it out.
Sociopath or psychopath?
Yes.
What do you think when you hear those two words?
This is kind of where my cynicism would come into play. I consider those two terms to be a bit of a joke, honestly. There are some very deranged people out there that honestly, I would argue that it is fair enough to give them a term with a very bad reputation. However, I would definitely say I always got a kick out of those two, because you would always hear that the big difference between the two. So here that the big difference too, because you would always hear that the big difference between the two. So they would have a bunch of symptoms that they would share. They would be narcissists. They would have low empathy. They would have visions of grandeur. They would have a bunch of things like that. But the big difference you would always hear people mention is that psychopaths were more calculated and more patient, while sociopaths were more impulsive, and they kind of would ride their ego more frequently. Psychopaths would too, but less often, right? And I always got a kick out of that because, simply put, I think they describe different things from antisocial personality disorder. And more often than not, I would say it represents things that don't exist, right? Like if you were to talk about a person that you would usually think to be a sociopath, a person, high security prison, right? I don't know what terms I can use and which ones I can't, but I'm sure you can think of many examples. Think of, like, let's say, people that were usually involved in a lot of illegal activities, of course. And you'd look at them and you'd see that they would have low empathy, right? You'd see that 9 out of 10 times, they don't really care that they did what they did. You would see that they're capable of very harsh things. But they're missing a lot of the marks that you find that, like, people would attribute them psychopath or sociopath, but more often than not, they would miss a lot of features, like a lot of the marks that you find that, like, people would attribute them psychopath or sociopath, but more often than not, they would miss a lot of features. Like, a lot of them aren't narcissistic, right? A lot of them, without going too in depth, it doesn't add up. There's a couple people that fit the bill, but you could make up any diagnosis under the sun, and I'm sure you can find at least a couple people that would fit it, right?
The next symptom listed by the Mayo Clinic is using charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or personal pleasure.
I mean, fact of the matter is, like, oddly enough, if I was just saying that I use that, I would be flattering myself a little bit too much. I wouldn't say I have a charming personality or a witty personality. That's the reason why I smiled, by the way. That's the reason why I smiled, by the way. Because if I agreed with that, that would basically be me being a very narcissistic individual, in my opinion.
Do you fear being looked at as a narcissist?
I don't care. Most of the people that call me narcissistic just call me narcissistic for no discernible reason. So I've stopped caring about that kind of thing. But, like, I wouldn't flatter myself with anything as much as I would use a charming personality for pleasure. But, like, if someone wants to be around me, I want to do my best to justify that. Some people, due to insecurities, interpret intelligence as narcissism. It's not. It rarely is. You'll meet a couple people like that, but the vast majority of people, when they speak on a subject or they correct you on something if you're talking about something, and it's not out of malice or superiority, but that's besides the point. That's just something. And it's not out of malice or superiority, but that's besides the point. That's just something I experienced. I'm not some, like, cold, calculated person like Hannibal Lecter, where I'm not just sitting here like this, Clarice. It's not like that, right? The movie
movies like that do harm to people with antisocial personality disorder?
Amazing movie, but yes, probably.
It was a good movie, but I agree with you that it might be somebody's first introduction to the topic, and then they believe everybody is a killer.
Oh yeah.
But with that said, do you believe people should keep their guard up when interacting with somebody with antisocial personality disorder? But I agree with you that it might be somebody's first introduction to the topic, and then they believe everybody is a killer.
Oh yeah.
But with that said, do you believe people should keep their guard up when interacting with somebody with antisocial personality disorder?
No more than anybody else. There's a lot of sensitive topics. I'm sure you can think of a few that have to do with people that certainly had antisocial personality disorder popping up on the news in the past few years. And you'll notice something, which is they could reach a point where they could get certain things that they shouldn't have had access to, but they were able to get it just because they wanted to. I have to be very vague for obvious reasons, but you
The
know...
algorithm, yeah, but no, I fully understand what you're saying, and I believe most of our audience will too.
Yes, and it's a real shame because on an individual level, if you were to ask most people about those individuals, they would say in a heartbeat, oh yeah, I'm not surprised. But oddly enough, the people that aren't around them every day, like let's say a psychiatrist or a therapist, right? They would have, in my experience, a much harder time rounding out something like that because, simply put, limited exposure can only take you so far. Like I was saying, there's a lot of people where when something would come up and they were asked, in hindsight, was there anything about this person? They would say that they weren't surprised. And for me, it's frustrating. In hindsight, was there anything about this person? They would say that they weren't surprised. And for me, it's frustrating as someone that has antisocial personality disorder, because that exact response is why I have it. If you see someone struggling and you know that they're going through something, you do nothing, but in hindsight you would say you're not surprised. That to me is why I don't like people. I have noticed in my personal experience the overwhelming majority would rather do nothing, keep on living their lives, and then when the kettle would boil over, they'd be like, yeah, not surprised.
Do you think that the media constantly portraying people with antisocial personality disorder as violent makes the people who aren't violent with this diagnosis not ever talk about it because they don't want to be labeled as violent?
I agree with that to some extent at the very least. Because if I could be a bit blunt, the media cares more about their revenue than actually giving a truthful story. It's why if you're, let's say, doing a research paper, you can't use news outlets, right? Even ones that would somewhat cover academic subjects, right? Because at the end of the day, they do care much more about profits. Like even some of the scientific news articles would use things like clickbait and stuff to get views and reads or whatever medium it's on. So if you're going to be talking about someone on the news with antisocial personality disorder, you only really do it one of two ways. And the first way is you either paint him to be a villain, right? And you do this by basically, perpetuating the stereotype of dangerous person, cold, calculated, dangerous, right? The alternative would be if you were to kind of go for like the tragic victim route, right? Where you would paint them as a victim of their environment, right? Calculated, dangerous, right? The alternative would be if you were to kind of go for like the tragic victim route, right? Where you would paint them as a victim of their environment, right? Those are the only two ways you would paint the picture.
What's the ethical way to do it?
The ethical way to do it, I would argue, the latter is the ethical way to do it until someone with antisocial personality disorder does something serious. The latter is the ethical way to do it until someone with antisocial personality disorder does something serious. Then in which case it should be viewed less as someone with antisocial personality disorder doing it and more of a criminal doing a crime. With time, oddly enough, I got better at not talking about it, and I got better at functioning with it to the point where I work in customer service. Oddly enough, I got better at not talking about it, and I got better at functioning with it to the point where I work in customer service. And, you know, my manager was surprised to find out like a week or two ago that I actually don't usually talk to people, right? When he found out that in my free time I usually spend time on my own studying or reading a book, he was surprised that I didn't hang out with people more often just because of my ability to talk, my ability to be well-spoken, and things like that. In fact, you know, it's at a point where, oddly enough, besides the therapist I told years back.
This was the part 2. I'll put the part 1 up again, one more time, or once again. I found him to be very intelligent, smart. He was quite honest and genuine. He said clearly that if something happens to someone, or if I go down and take everyone, blow everyone down with me, he wouldn't mind. This is not something he can control. The part that has to do with empathy in our brain that processes it, that's where they lack it. They can do dangerous things. Bring harm to themselves, bring harm to others. They're very calculated, manipulated, just like he said. Antisocial personality disorders have, I believe, 4 different types. But research and studies are learning more about it. Serial killers intend to have antisocial personality disorder. The old term was psychopath. You heard I liked that he said he doesn't bother with the term psychopath and sociopath. He doesn't bother about those 2 terms. He takes it as a joke. That's not the professional term. And just like he said, it's called antisocial personality disorder. That's the correct term. That is what the viewer was trying to argue with me in the comment channel. I'm being rude. She said you get sued for using the term antisocial personality disorder. She said personality disorders doesn't exist. I was trying to explain to her that personality disorders exist. There's borderline personality disorder, historic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and bipolar disorder. There's more and more disorders that come in the DSM-5 because research is done. Although I believe more funding should go for mental health research, and I'm sure he He deserves credit for being so honest, for being so genuine and telling us. And imagine he's only 21 years old. This interview was from a couple of years ago. He was 21 years old. Look at how smart, intelligent, decent, mindful, respectful he is. He said himself he's decent, but he said not all antisocial personality disorder clients will be as decent as me. I agree. Doesn't like the camera, keeps on smiling. But I personally believe it takes only something to trigger a person with antisocial personality disorder. In part one, he was saying that he hurted someone and he said they deserved it, but he said not in a physical way, in a financial way, that it destroyed everything for them. That's why you see a lot of CEOs, people sitting in high positions that have antisocial personality disorder, even if they're not diagnosed with it, because they're very bossy, manipulative, calculative. They don't mind firing people or hiring people, even if your family doesn't have food to eat and you get fired for no reason. Person with antisocial personality disorder would sleep well. They wouldn't bother. They don't have bothers. They could be driving a dead body in a car and stopped by the police because they speeded and they're going to get a speeding ticket. They will speak so well and manipulate the officer that they will be let off. That's how calculative, manipulative they are. They're narcissistic, lack of empathy. And if they do something nice, it is to their benefits. There has to be some benefits in for them. I'm not saying all antisocial personality disorder clients are dangerous or such things, but I'm saying that many of them have those symptoms. Lack of empathy, lack of remorse. They don't take accountability. Let me know what you think. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a lovely day.